So some of you may have heard I like to tie knots. What we're doing today is working on a little bit of control and attack stuff using the other guy's lapel. So we'll start off right off the bat. Everybody you just want wound the alls, you want to show off your shaved chest. Take out your lapels, just everybody just knock them out. This is our tools for the day. We're going to use these a lot. All right, so first thing I want to touch on is the guard pass using a control. We'll start with control, we'll lead into traps, and we'll go into some submissions once we get towards a little bit more understanding of the control elements, okay? So I've got a guy in bottom half guard, and we're in, that standard format half guard. I've got him flattened out as much as I can. He wants to raise his shoulder, he wants to get underhooks, he wants to do a lot of things to get out of this flattened position. So while he's working on that, I'm maintaining my balance, turning my hips. Every time he bumps, I make sure that I keep my balance, and I'm opening up that little bit of space to wrap, right? So I'm starting to open up the lapel and make it long. I want to start with the tension around his neck. I want to make sure he has tension on his neck, and I want to start feeding a long lapel out towards his hip, or out towards this angle here. Trying to get a big circle wrapped, and I'm putting the lapel into my hand. So I don't want to grab the lapel and pull my hand out from under him. I want to make sure that my hand stays deep and I'm feeding from this end. This is the beginning of the end for him. I want to make sure that all the slack is being taken out on the front end. We're going to consider this kind of a situation where half guard is somewhere we're stuck in. Somebody's got a good half guard. We're trying to pass, we're trying to balance, but we're just kind of doing a lot of maintenance on this top half. Trying not to get swept, trying to pass, but I need to preface with, this isn't the priority. The rest of it is. This is when we're stuck in this situation and we have this thing in front of us for so long, we have time to really tighten it up, okay? So I want to make sure I get that nice tight wrap, point where his elbow starts to lift. If his elbow is having a hard time going down, we know we've got it deep enough. Okay, so once we get to this point, I'm just turning my hips to kind of relieve some of the weight and give him a little confidence that he may be able to push on me this way, okay? And as that weight gets relieved, I need to shift my hips up and extract my foot up. So it's up towards his head and then up towards the ceiling. Into a nice 45 degrees. Or you can get your hips back in. Either way, we're not releasing that control we have. There remains tension wrapped all the way around the shoulder. And our side control looks like this. So, again, we're just maintaining our balance on the front end, our cross face if we can. Even if it's not there, if we don't have the cross face, then we have this nice thing to work with. His arms in front of us. Even if his arm's down low, start working from the inside. Trying to wrap and trap. Scooting my butt up towards his armpit. Foot up and out. 45 degrees. So that's where we're going to start. Try to focus on getting the circulation cut out of your partner's shoulder. Ask him how it feels. Okay? If you get that going, you're on the right track. Okay? It's not, if we have a loose lapel and we've pulled it through, the head slips, there's a lot of room here. And not to mention, with this tension, we really pin his shoulder to the floor over here without having to commit weight to that side, which is a really important factor here. I don't want to have to commit weight to this shoulder because that's how I get swept across. Right, so I'm pinning that far shoulder by trapping it to the mat. If he tries to lift that shoulder, if he tries to bump towards me, come on, all the way towards me. He has nowhere to go because that far shoulder is locked over there. So my hand is just on the mat. You can see I got gi imprints just from holding that spot. Up and out. Find the tension. Cool? We'll start there, we'll come back and we'll spitball this thing. we are now in side control, okay? So this is where the fun begins. I've got the side control, the beauty of the side control is that you've got a very isolated arm at your disposal, okay? And that's fine and dandy. There's 4 limbs, right? Arms and legs. We want to use these 2 as the supplemental limbs, but also as knots and ropes and choking devices and torture devices and all those things. Okay, so I want to use as much of this as possible. So I saw some people that were getting the lapel but not owning it. This is my weapon. I want to have complete control of my weapon at all times, right? So if I just have my fingers wrapped around it a little bit, it becomes a lot harder to control. My grips get burned out faster, and it's harder to use as a tool. It may have a little bit of control element, which is a good starting point. So I might have grabbed just to get a control, just to establish a little bit of setup. And now that we're here, I want to make sure that I have as much of this as possible. I want that rope to be, sit up real quick, please. Flat, over the shoulder, wrapped flat around, and then there's this nice flat lapel across his back, right? So I've got a nice, even thing. I got a nice rope to work with. If it's all bunched up and twisted, it's really hard to get control with, okay? So I want to have the nice, flat lapel that's just taut as much as possible. Take all the slack out of it. Take all the slack out of the lapel and take all the slack out of your arm. If you're pulling that lapel, you're wasting your energy and you don't have as much leverage by a lot. You're taking all the leverage out and you're just using your muscles. So we got all this rope. We've wrapped it tight. Starting here, it's tight here. It's tight here. It's tight, tight, tight. Passing that rope to my hand as far as I can get my hand through so I don't have to pull a lot. There's a little bit of a pull as we settle in, but we're not pulling past the shoulder. Okay. All right, so now we got our initial setup. And everybody's going to do the same things they always do to escape. They're going to get their cross face protections in. They're going to start hipping. They're going to start moving all kinds of things. So the first thing we want to do is block that very first problem that we have, the standard cross face protection, right? He's got that in. I'm going to take this shoulder pressure that he's been trying to fight, and I'm going to release and trap. So I just lean a little bit. When I lean, he's got that feeling like his push is working, so it stays connected to me. His shoulder is all of a sudden free, and we put the weight back on with the lapel. And now his arm is trapped up next to his cheek, and he's feeling pretty dumb right now. Right? So he thought he was doing the right thing, right? He's got that frame on. Good for him. It gets tight again this way, and then tight this way. So now we've got a good trap over the wrist. And this hand's gonna come like an uppercut and grab the other side, just like a baseball bat grip. Knee to the shoulder. My arm lifts on this end and drops on this end. My knee follows my elbow across the shoulder. Turn, release, wrap, uppercut, knee on belly. Knee and elbow follow each other across. My head and my shoulder get heavy on the chest. Knee, elbow, lift. Excuse me. One more time. Well, we can start from side control and just extract that lapel as we're working, right? We don't have to be in half guard. Side control. Knee on belly a little bit if you want. I like to sit here with my knee just on the hip. Not a true knee on belly, but just blocking that hip. Makes it spread out. Wrap. Uppercut, knee on belly. My hands are only a millimeter apart, if that. If he's defending with the bottom hand, which he will be, I'm using my elbow and my knee together. I can put my knee right on his shoulder, knee plants, then my shoulder plants, and my knee comes off the mat. Up on the toes, right? So the knee is heavy on the shoulder. As soon as it bypasses the shoulder, all the weight is in my elbow and my shoulder, okay?
Joey, would you mind doing it once this sort of...
Yes, sir, of course. Turn, trap, uppercut, knee on belly. Slide that knee across the shoulder. Turn my weight towards him, heavy. Lifting that shoulder and dropping that elbow. You good with that? Any more times? Any questions? Try it out. So now we got another kind of situation here where the guy is not so easily fooled into getting his wrist trapped, and he starts his defensive process. He starts turtling up or turning towards me, or whatever the case may be. So this kind of goes back into the control element. I'm not going to get this wrap, and he starts moving and shrimping. And if I try to keep this grip, go ahead and get guard back. I'm exposing myself big time, right? So that grip, you need to be able to just let it go, like Elsa says, right? But there's also another way to do it. If I don't want to let it go, if I'm one of those people who's got, control issues, I have to have that thing. As he shrimps, I'm not going to hold on to it. I'm going to switch hands. And as he shrimps, or go ahead and turtle, I pull it back to the other side. Right? So the idea here is that this shoulder, I let him lift it just enough to where he feels confidence. I switch hands, and I pull it back. Okay. He lifts, still holding it. Just an anchor. It's like a stiff arm. He goes. I still. Keeping that shoulder pinned the whole time. Just enough room that I don't get tied to him and get his guard recovery that he wants. All right, so I'm starting with that good control. He lifts. I switch. I pin the shoulder. Okay. Let's do that transition for 2 minutes. Then we'll come back and choke some more, okay? All the time. So what I'm looking for, just like a lot of north-souths, is kind of getting behind that far tricep. Not north-south, but that full switch across the other side, right? So just like as if I was transitioning over here and working towards the arm, working towards that same angle, but instead of going for the arm, I'm going to go for the jugular again, right? So I've got my control. He starts to move. I pin, and I circle. And I've got that weight on the lapel. He doesn't like that. He might be resisting, which is fine. I'm going to take that weight. And transfer it. I don't go to my knees until the wrap is complete. That's when I stick my weight back. So I've got the weight from the transfer on the lapel. So he turns. I'm still leaning on his shoulder and the lapel. He's not going to go anywhere but towards me. Wrap. I can just go to my knees at that point. There's more technical ways to do it, obviously.
And you showed this way?
Okay, so I like this a lot because unlike a forearm or a leg or a muscle or whatever, the blood is, every little capillary is being shut off by that rope, by the lapel, all the way around your neck. So there's no limbs in the way. You get full coverage of blood loss, right? Or blood circulation cut off. So getting the, you asked for this angle. The control, he lifts, I'm controlling. Maybe I go knee on belly. He still turns towards me, fine. Heavy on the chest, around the neck. Behind the neck. And I'm reaching. And starting the lawnmower. So reach to the floor, and a turn.
So excited
Was that? So, one more time. Control. Lift. Control. Control. Tension. Or turn. Or lots of variations.
Poor man.
Okay. So play around with the finish, but let's get to that point. So we're not going to go into the whole Bravo grip explanation, but it's the same grip from the guard. If I have a hard time controlling the posture, I get that same wrap around with the lapel. But instead of, sometimes I will go here just to hold control. We'll start here, whatever. So I'm just holding posture, right? As this guy wants his posture back, I'm going to let him have it, but I'm going to keep one shoulder. So I just have that same wrap, as much slack as I can get out of it. I'm going to use two hands to kind of control the back of his head. So anytime he tries the posture, just using just that rowing motion to kind of keep myself up. And not necessarily pulling him as I am going with him. So he goes up, I make sure I'm heavy on his neck. Okay? We play this game for a little bit until I feel like he really wants his posture. And I drop. When I drop, I switch my hips. So the weight comes down on this thing. And go right back. All I'm going to do to get the finish is grab his far elbow and extend. Very simple finish. Right, if I try to get too complicated with all the wrapping, the knot is too obvious at that point. So, get that lapel, controlling his posture, having that posture battle, maybe going for my Bravo choke, and he pops through. Hips, grab that far elbow, and it's really my knees are squeezing together, and I'm putting myself behind his neck. So I want to go over here. Right, I don't want to go under him and extend and make sure I'm going behind him. So same exact control, just from the bottom of guard. Got my posture control, take the slack out, controlling his posture. He pops up, I switch my hips, transfer, far elbow, pull it to me. Now, don't be a total asshole to your partner, but if they tuck their chin, you'll need to teach each other that your face isn't a shield, okay? So if we get to this situation and his chin goes down, nice and slow, you just feel the pressure. Like don't do it hard. This is not okay. So it's not cool to rip your partner's face off with the lapel, but if you need to get a sweep via face, be polite. Just talk about it a little bit, because it's a valid thing to be aware of. Everybody goes, my partner's been so nice to me for so many years in the gym that my face is a shield. It's not. It'll hurt. So you get used to being able to protect yourself with your face because your partner's being polite and trying to get under your chin. Normal gym stuff that happens, but it's good to know that if we get to this point and his face is in the way, that's his problem. Okay, that's a good sweep there, or all kinds of face ripping fun stuff. Don't do that. Let's try that choke. If you trust your partner, try the sweep. But other than that, let's see how that feels. Cool? That that one and the one before it were a little circumstantial, I guess you can say. But so what if we get into a traditional transfer around the far side and we get that grip we wanted with just a standard transition into that figure four grip. So we've got our standard grip, we've got our weight in the chest, we're behind the tricep, we're fishing for these things, and he's got good defense, and I'm just not gonna get this out of here. He's got too much tension, too much defense going down, okay? So we got a little different kind of a thing to use now. We're gonna use the same weapon we've been using, but now we're gonna turn this into a better knot, okay? So I've got my weight in, I wanna have my forearm heavy in the ribs, my chest heavy in the shoulder, and I'm gonna use that same idea of getting long tension and taking his wrist and making it mine, okay? So we got that, all that slack taken out. So there's a few things we can do. We can still get different lapel variations from behind him, but we can go into a more traditional collar choke from the back here that I like. So when we have this level of control on the wrist, anytime he tries to pull his wrist down to the floor, it gets worse. If he tries to roll away, he obviously has nothing. So I have a lot of control. I can actually kind of like hang out over here a little bit if I get this tight enough. This is a kind of, I can just relax and watch him suffer and writhe on the floor. Okay, but I want to give the guy enough space to dig himself a grave, okay? So I'm adding all this pressure to get it all deep, and I'm making sure that he doesn't have any air to breathe. But then there's a light. And I might even like take all the weight off and get him up on his elbow a little bit. If I can get him up on his elbow, that's what we're looking for. So we got the traditional figure four control from the back, looking for those kimuras and arm bars. He's a steel trap, he's locked in. I can't get the thing out of there. Real tight. Behind. Want to get him in the worst possible place he can be, and then extend. If I try to finish here, he's scrambling still. So I want to make sure I settle in, open him up, and then arch the finish. I even got an armbar over here, I think. I don't know what he was tapping to. So, trap, release some pressure, hook, coming across, flatten him out, and I'm pulling my elbow down to my ribs and opening up his shoulder. And I'm just keeping this wrist tight over here. It's not going anywhere yet, okay? Once we're in here, we can do all kinds of things, obviously. There's one that we came up with once where if he wants to come up here and start attacking my neck, I can get my other lapel involved so that he's handcuffed. We call this the foot of justice. But that's a little tricky. We won't do that one. I mean, you can play with it if you want. But just see what kind of traps you can develop here with the lapel. And also the same trap applies with the belt. That's a pretty good lockdown too. Okay, so I got a lot of control here without having to use a lot of my body. His elbow's stuck. Lots of different variations of how you can finish from there. So start with the control, play with the finishes. All right?